nobody coming in. Tell a friend, tell a friend, tell a friend. Tam Behind the Mic is live. And we're waiting, we're talking and discussing about the partial verdict and the Diddy trial. Well, if some don't know or not aware, I am a child essay survivor, a victim, an adult survivor within hip hop and out. And I'm one of the minimal voices that is finally putting some value into what happened to me and telling my story. And of course, I've been ostracized, and because I don't comply, and I've never been complicit directly into what was going on within the music industry and hip hop. I must say, as a woman still recovering from addiction, substances, and losing my daughter almost 8 years ago, who, by the way, I must say, when I thought I had a deal on the table, and it was taking the place of another member in a group called Silk and Lace, the same guys that manipulated and preyed and delved in various different fraudulent activities in the beginning when I first met them or really became supposedly part of the group with those hidden agendas. Um, it's been quite rewarding and I guess a source of freedom for me because of having to be silenced. Unfortunately, we live in a world that is surrounded with fake and false friends, even within that circles, those circles that go back from the first generation. I've been doing a little bit of investigation in regards to a lot of people in the onset. And from my experience and my I guess conclusion is that a lot of us preteens and teenagers that were in the park during the park jam. Hi, how you doing? You come in to join in the discussion. A lot of the older guys were preying on the young kids, girls and boys. You have the Africa Bambata, you have various different people from the Bronx and from Queens, right? And I guess the other boroughs too. And this is how are you, sweetie? Well, I'm doing pretty good. I'm hanging in there. Just trying to dissect and trying to woosa and come down a little bit. With this Diddy verdict, I must say that I had a grateful weekend. One of my daughters, my mini me's, graduated with her master's in science in the field of health administration. And I was so super proud of her. But it was like bittersweet because I have, yes, she certainly did. And I've always been my children's biggest fans because unfortunately I came from a dysfunctional family with a lot of ancestral, I guess, curses. And when it comes to predatory behaviors, I should say, and raping, I've done some research to find out that a lot of that happened to my mother. And unfortunately, she was not able in her right mind, and the powers that be left me in her household where she had a lot of resolved issues, and she sought through religion. And what I try to tell people from my own experience of having to leave home at 13 and finding solace early on, because when my parents was together, I had an intact family from the time I was born. So I thought until 5, maybe 6, 7, when they actually split up for good. But I remember that there was little absences. And my mom, she spent time in the mental institution. And Lord and behold, that I had found out, she had told me that, and something that I knew, that she had one of my brothers who was raised down in North Carolina at the age of, I think, 14. I think she was pregnant at 13. And a 29-year-old man raped her. And he was incarcerated as a result. And, even to this day, I've heard and I've watched the comments about Diddy and other females, and even myself. They're like, quiet. Oh, it's like taboo. You shouldn't speak upon it. And I must say, I was around in the first generation of what became hip hop. But I started out in Queens, and I started out in the parks. And then there was the block parties and the house parties, and then there was the venues. And I was young, and I didn't lie about my age. But however, when you had older people that had good intention, you had protection. And when my I guess gangsters cousins were alive, I didn't have any problems. It was like when everybody split up. But yeah, and I just think in terms of, it was really bad for me, but I think about other people of what I saw, and later on, my deceased daughter, who transitioned almost 8 years ago, and I was still running around uh, doing shows, manipulated with false intention, and doing rehearsals and babysitting, and then being fraudulently manipulated into moving from the Bronx into Queens. And I must say, I tried to go after those those pretties, because that's what they are. That's what they are. Unfortunately, my case was dismissed because I filed pro se, and it was too much of an emotional impact for an individual to even represent. So I never got a chance to amend my complaint. I never got a chance to file a brief. In fact, it goes so deep that it's so evil that you don't realize that you're being reeled in and you're being manipulated. So I feel for Cassie and all of them. I really do. But I know I wasn't having it. I tried my best, and but I didn't get out of it unscathed and not impacted, because had I knew that there was conditions, I would have never made that move. Even as a teenager, I learned how to duck and weave, even though, I must say, there were young teenagers that were promiscuous. And unfortunately, in the onset of hip hop, there was the egos, and there were predators around every neighborhood, and most people knew who they were. Like up in the Bronx, people knew about the alleged dealings. Well, he got a default judgment, but a lot of people that I've spoken to, even recently, they knew about the activities of Africa Bambaataa. And also, a lot of the females, not all of them, but a lot of them, had children by these older guys. Some of them got married, some of them didn't. Some of them was passed around, and it seems as though because they kept silent and they were complicit, even though they weren't at the age of consent, you know, there was just hidden thing that they were doing. And some people will say, well, they were young, you know, but a lot of times they were just, promiscuous. And it could have been that they were not protected, like me. And everyone that has had that experience doesn't become promiscuous. They don't. With me, I had family members early on in my dad's side, and I've had the blessing of reconnecting with one of my cousins who was a musician. They had moved out in California because once my mom split, with my dad, the family was in like upheaval. I was the only one that my mother seemed to be able to raise. I was the only daughter, but I have an older sister, 10 years older from my dad, that lives in Connecticut, and I knew her since I was a little girl because she used to come down and visit. But what I would like to say is that music always provided a certain solace. I was always fascinated with the Fred Astaire and the Ginger Rogers and Julia and Stormy Weather and Porgy and Bess and things like that. So even though there might have been a lot of things going on in the household that I didn't necessarily understand, but what I did understand was the power of music. And my granddad and all of them, they were musicians and they played blues a lot. And they sang and they had a band. And I was so glad before my cousin Tweety transitioned. How you doing? Hey, how's it going? Yeah, I'm just kicking it up a little live here. Um, so I think that's where I really, started my appreciation for music, as well as attending once I got into 118 in St. Albans, Queens. There was a great musical instructor. So, how would I know that such a genre, before it was named hip hop, that, that people were actually doing these things to children, you know. And I'm surprised that the prosecutions didn't go into, didn't delve too deep into the children with the Diddy trial. That was like kind of a hiccup for me because I thought that they say maybe they didn't have the evidence and the proof, but yeah, because I know that there was supposed to be underage children involved. And I know Allie, is an alleged victim. I wasn't there, so I don't know. But I believe her and the survivor. Like people don't want to believe me, but I'm one too. And, every day that I awake, even, being 60 years into the 60th year of my life on this planet, I always have to hug myself, you know, and because for me, trying to trust people and thinking they have my best interests at heart, and to find out that they didn't, that there was a lot of jealousy and there was a lot of preying going on people. And one thing I find that, you know, a lot of them stick together. It's a whole group. It's a whole group, you know. I remember when I was giving the input in the hip hop museum, right before they requested that I change my timeline. And I shouldn't have to change my timeline, and I'm not, because I do have verification who I am, when I started. And unfortunately, I did come out before a lot of the other females. I didn't cross over because, again, there was a lot of older people, executives, that seized the opportunity to steal people's songs and records. And what's so awful is that they could be the same skin color, but they don't care. It's just something that's embedded in them to steal and to move up and to cutthroat and backstab and do all of that stuff. This is figuratively, not literally. So, usually when people are engaging in that, they always have help. Just like in the Diddy instance. And I even recall that there was some young ladies and that there was, somebody underage. And I remember asking a producer when he wanted me to come out there and work with someone in 2012, when he thought I had it going on. When I was doing A&R, and I was doing a little bit of PR and different things, because my love of music never left, whether or not I choose to rap or not. But for me, I still have deep, complex trauma from dealing with the whole thing, and I'm still working through it. But the first thing I said to him is like, what did you do to her? If she doesn't want to come to practice, she don't want to record, you know, just knowing the history years back, and then eventually meeting the young lady and then watching what was transpiring. Now I have more of intuition, and I can trust my intuition. And it really wasn't a comfortable scene for me. And of course, no one knows. Well, I don't know to this day what happened to the group. And I'm not for sure whether or not their music was placed, because you have a lot of that going on. I was with the group called Silk and Lace, and I was brought in to replace another young lady, Lace, under false pretense. And I learned the songs, I mastered it, I developed a chemistry with the other, with the other member. And that's when I had my daughter. My daughter was young, and we didn't get paid. And one of the songs went on to become Billboard 100. And it appears that no one got paid. I know I didn't get paid for the show, and I didn't get paid for babysitting time, and I didn't get paid for uh, my attire, and all of that was just BS again, because they manipulate on such a different level. They really do. And I think just because certain things have changed, and I applaud certain females that are getting the credit that's really due to them. But however, I still believe that and I know for a fact that, they're saying official records of certain things, and it's not official. It's not. The history of those who are really trailblazers and pioneers are not being recorded, because if it was, it would conflict in the narrative of the so-called the Bronx doing and distributing and doing all of that. And at the same time, for me personally, it puts a taint on the whole thing, because if the Bronx knew that all of these things was going on, and even the grandest of them all allegedly, have children impregnating teenagers, you know, this could have really been stopped. I don't think there would be any Diddy and others and R. Kelly if we really would have, and the powers that be, and even as a community, that we nip a lot of these behaviors in the bud, you know, because I was put in a place, in a situation where these other guys knew that people had reputations of preying on different folks and people, if you know what I mean. What's up, Tam? I didn't know you were live. Oh, yeah. Hey, Silk. Yeah, girl, I figured I had to get in here and get live for the simple fact that, this Diddy, they did the partial verdict, and I think they charged him on certain counts, and it just kicked up a lot of different things for me. So I said, you know what? Let me jump on here and let me have a little discussion. I had messed up the previous live, so I had to delete it. But yeah, I was just talking to the community, about my experience and how I have compassion for a lot of those victims and a lot of those survivors, whether or not it be Diddy, the ones that are still alive, and the other ones that may be still strung out on substances because of the deception. You know what I mean? Yes, Silk, talented to the hilt. She kill at will, you better run for the hills. Yeah, I was telling them how, how it's manipulated in that situation with us. And how, one of the songs became the Billboard Top 100. No one got paid for the production deal. I came in with false pretense of being signed to that contract with Profile Records. And this is in the latter part of the 80s. Now, I had started out in 1976. But this young lady here that's in the chat, Silk, we worked hard diligently. And I had a little girl with me. And she was from the Bronx. I was from Queens. I had moved back from the Bronx to Queens. And these same guys. And I just should have known better. But I didn't know better. Unfortunately, I was put in a household which had a lot of dysfunction and had a lot of the infest going on within. And I had a friend of me who was very promiscuous, who was alleged to have been doing things for the younger brother, who unfortunately is no longer here because of an overdose a couple of years ago. And yep. You said it, girl. You said it. Yep. Right. We were in Billboard twice, 1992. And you know what? They don't go around and they don't say nothing about it. You know why? You know why I believe that's so? I can't wait till I have StreamYard. Because then this way I'll be able to bring people up. Is because they know that it was a lot of shystiness and that nobody got paid. And it seems like they're getting paid according to the paperwork. And what's awful is that even at my daughter's funeral, like a couple of days later, this guy was trying to pick up somebody. And I could not believe it. I was livid. I had to curse him out. And at the same time, he figured, well, you know what? She said no to me because these egos and this sense of entitlement is ridiculous. I was also sharing about the grandest of them all, allegedly, having impregnated teenagers up in the Bronx. And that's why a lot of people is quiet as a mouse. And what behooves me is that you got all of these fan boys and fan girls that's running behind them, because after all these decades, and all of this money that has been made within this genre, and they call it a culture. My thing is the damn culture. You understand? This is a hidden secret in the culture. Like, I know for a fact that, a young lady out of the Mercedes ladies group, like I said early on, there were girls that were promiscuous, but you shouldn't have classified everybody as being that way. And unfortunately, what went on with me is that I was the lurer and false pretense of practicing for shows and different events, but in essence, it was to lure young girls and teenagers like myself. And I had been doing it so long, and at one point, I, was down with my cousin's group, Atomic Sounds, because I had played with so many different groups. I was the one that would run up to the parks, early on. Let me get on the mic, let me do my thing, and I would do it. And I freestyled, and here you have these people that crossed over and they're getting all of this homage. Like I have said on different things, I'm like, well, what the hell did they do? I don't care what they did. My thing is that my innocence should have been protected. And I should have been protected as a child, as a teenager, as a young adult. And I did the best to protect my daughter as well. But however, having to fight and having to thumb and having to deliver, babies on my bed because the mother is strung out on crack, just being put into a total disarray, which was out of the norm for me, was ridiculous. So if I have complex trauma, which I do, it's very valid for the simple fact that I'm always in survival mode. Always. And then I see this clown running around here that's saying that I don't exist or he don't know me because his behind started out what he was doing in 1978, not realizing that I had MC'd and I did things in Harlem, But again, that's when it was really all innocence. Innocence. Like to each his own. When you of age and you give consent, that's a whole different animal. But you shouldn't be lured into anything by somebody preying on you, giving you substances, and then waiting till you vulnerable, and then taking advantage, and then, it's the whole psychological. I feel for them because I went through things that was just similar. And I see people saying, oh, they shouldn't take, or they need to take everything from him, whoever else was in the first generation, and in between, they got dirt on their hands. And nobody want to hear now you running and hiding behind the churches when you've had people's lives uprooted, and then you got a lot of politicians. Not all of them, but you have a lot of politicians that have our skin colors, but they're not our kinfolks. That's complicit with this. Just like that Curious George that's running here in New York City. That the president let him go, pardon him, because they said it was a warfare or whatever against him, which I really don't believe that from firsthand experience, because I know of all of that shadiness. And then here, me as an individual, after going through all of that and hip hop and having to raise my daughter, that was triggered and a psychological impact, because my daughter should not have had to be here. No, I'm not outside. I'm in Dream's room. In fact, I have the fan. I have the fan blowing, girl, because I was having a little hot flash, and I don't have the air conditioner on in my room yet, in my window. I just jumped in here, and I said, you know what? I got to talk about this, because I'm watching. Everybody's like silence as a coin. And then I don't trust that museum up in the Bronx. I really don't, because of all of the shady stuff that they were doing in the beginning. Because I remember when I walked up there in the educational day, they didn't even publicize it. I was telling one of the other pioneers from phase 3, that he was like, well, why you didn't tell me? I said, because I didn't know. I was expecting a lot of people that I knew, and I thought that they were just going to go from borough to borough. And it's like people are being force fed. The Bronx. Yeah, the Bronx could be accredited to some things, but during that time, I didn't go to the Bronx to start rapping, and I didn't hear no other females rapping. I was from Queens. The first time I heard a chick, let me think, was from Harlem, and that was like 78. It had to be around 78 when I was in the kids' home, and all the children around the different boroughs were housed in Queens Society Prevention of Cruelty for Children. Now that was like a staple for everything, and it was a hub. So I'll delve into that in my memoir, and because I want to do something different for the documentary. Yeah, for the documentary. But yeah, this Diddy thing got me going because people are quiet as a mouse. And then Facebook last week, another guy, not D from DMC, he hasn't said anything posted, but another guy that I knew that first told me, well, people got to know who you are. And then you're flipping because you're fan basing. No, niggas, stop fan basing. History is history. Like, I'm not intimidating because I didn't have a deal. I was supposed to have one with Profile with the silk and lace, but that didn't work out, you know, because again, these bad business practices and this unspoken shadiness in the culture. Instead of them wanting to clean it up, they want to hide and cover it up. And it keeps festering and it's permeating and it's destroying so many communities because that young 16-year-old in 2012, I wish I could have found her. I wish I could have found her. I wish I could have found some more. And who the hell knows? I would hate to think that people are unalive and they might be on that property in Pennsylvania. Who the hell knows? I don't put nothing past none of them because the shystiness of it all. Oh, to protect your legacy, you need to just leave that alone with the Africa Bambaataa. It ain't all about Africa Bambaataa. It's about all of them. Whether or not it was a boy, it was a girl, it was a teen, it was an adult, you manipulated, you fraudulently told them, oh, that you're going to make them a star and it's supposed to be dealings, but you got all of these prerequisitions. That's messed up. And then you put them in a place where they're afraid to be blackballed. Well, shit, I don't give a damn about being blackballed. Because the same characters, what I wanted to say, this is really an epidemic proportion. This should be high alert because from my experience, this is happening in the workplace too, especially in public sector, the civil service, and all of that. And again, Curious George, he better hope I never run into him. I remember when my child died, I sent him an email. When things happen, I sent him. Yeah, they didn't know. They didn't know. Because there was so many few of us. It was like later on until you found out like 79 with me. And there was another female that was emceeing too when we were cheerleaders in the 7th and 8th grade. We used to call her Baby D, Diane. She was okay, but I was dope back then, and I would just hit it off the dome. But I remember when she just said she didn't want to do it no more because I wanted to partner up with her because I was like the Lone Ranger. And I think she's in the graduation book. But again, I lost my stuff, and I think these guys all of a sudden they came up with all these flyers, and Queens Library had them on display. Them niggas didn't have them flyers. I slipped up and said, and then come to find out where I had my stuff at when I finally followed up. Somebody that fit the description had got a hold to the stuff. Wonder who that could have been. You know? Yeah, but she never gave no reason why. You know? So, if Diddy serves this example, fine. And I don't give a damn. My case might have been dismissed, but they should have really changed a lot of the statutes. And I wish I would have had time enough to lawyer up and got the amendment. But the public record is there. It's there. It's there. The institution, because all of them, I think all of them are in the same damn game. Just like a lot, Diddy was not the only one. R. Kelly wasn't the only one. You know, and they talk about Bill Cosby. I don't think he had clean hands. And, you know, they want to say, oh, because he spoke out. Listen, you're doing the same thing. I believe that a lot of us are still selling ourselves into slavery. They're selling their souls and they're selling their people. That's what's going on. So, I'm praying that Trump don't pardon Diddy. Because this is some crazy crap. Because people need to be held accountable. Because there's so much irreparable damage that's been done. And I'm sure the ones that they had only at the trial, those are the ones they could find. I'm sure a lot of people are not the same. You know, yeah, even with me being a warrior and being a survivor and having to fight and having to go through all them changes. But damn, I've been fighting all my damn life. You get what I'm saying? And I'm really upset for the simple fact that here's something that started out pure in the parks. And I always have to kind of coddle myself, Silver. Because that girl, that friend of me, you know, I didn't even know what a hoe was like. Well, I wasn't one. But her, forget about it. You know, and the mother too. It was a lot. I should have never been placed in that household through the Bureau of Child Welfare and Queen Society Prevention for Cruelty. Because we'll talk about that at another day. Because I just don't want to overwhelm everyone and be here, there, everywhere. But yeah, as a victim and as a survivor, this thing has got me going. Yeah, with this Diddy. And like I said, I hope that he's held accountable. And I hope that a lot of those people within that board member of that museum, a lot of them are removed. Because a lot of them probably, allegedly, have been complicit with a lot of wrongdoing. And once I can go private, you know, then I'll go into some deep stuff. Because again, I've known a lot of things. These cats act like I was performing at the T Connection and singing, you know. But I guess that's it for now. I've been on here 40 minutes almost, and I gotta go tend to these children. But yeah, I'm glad to say I want to close up on a good note that, you know, I had a great weekend with my daughter under these circumstances. And I feel for a lot of those mothers that were great. And the grape ended in pregnancies. I wasn't the only one it happened to. It happened to many. And now people are running around acting like they gods and worshiping. So what? They're going to be continuously doing this wrongdoing and figuring that they above the law. No, it's about time that this stops. It has to cease. And it seems like to me that there's more Ricos that's gonna come. Because if you know about all of this and you still flashing and flaunting, then you ain't complicit to it. Period. I would also like to say that I kept telling brothers up in the Bronx when I went for the name signing. I think they had the first tribute to Disco King Mario, who is like family. He's somewhere on in my lineage line. I was able to find some other females from the Bronx that were dope MCs. I found them, through fasting, praying, and meditating because everybody has a story. And these clique of women, like Cheryl from Salt and Pepper, she know me from freestyling on the B53 bus going to school. You know, Sweet Tea. I remember when I think she was with the Glamour Girls or the Sweet Trio, where they were called, with Jazzy Joyce. You know, it's still like cutthroat, and every time I've said certain things, it's been one certain female that want to give whole credit for everything, and that's not so because it was too hard in a male dominated industry for one female to just do everything. It just wasn't so. And they get mad at me because they told me, you got to change your timeline. So I guess I didn't. And why the hell no? I'm always been a rebel. You damn skippy. I always been a rebel. I had to. Kidding me? I know what the hell was going on. And not one person could be everywhere at one time. Nobody could transport and teleport. That was impossible. And if you look at that time span, a lot of the boroughs, even sections within the boroughs, were very territorial. And, it's unfortunate that a lot of the trailblazers and the pioneers are no longer here able to stand up for their stance. So all of this Caribbean damn beginning, that's false too, because in 1977 I was down in North Carolina and they had two turntables, Big J and Big Mike, and they were spinning in a small town. Disco King Mario's brother talks about them. Talks about Big J. I don't know if he mentioned Big Mike, but Big Mike was with Big J. Yep. So, it's been a very productive week. Like I said, I had a good time with my daughter. The other half that helped producer, I've been at odds. It was never my forte, and I'm gonna leave it like that. But I had my daughter. My daughter saved my life, changed the trajectory of my story, and I raised my three daughters, but I lost my oldest one. And the audacity for anyone to, like Cat Williams said, you just got to know how to tell Diddy no. Well, I told this other cat no. No, I'm not going to jeopardize anybody. They have a beautiful voice. They got a manager. Years later, still, hey, hook me up. What? Nobody hooking you up. No way in hell. You'd never do that. Unreal. But I often think about a lot of those females. Where are they? And I've said it on Facebook. Where are they? Hell, we don't know who the hell is on a serial level. You understand? Because I'm still trying to figure out why the hell would somebody have floors pulled up out of one house and laid down in another. Can somebody answer that? And I find it ironic when these people and these guys get their backs against the wall. Oh, now they want to pray to God. Which God they praying to? Because just like the damn clowns that tried to come for, that I came for, and now one of them trying to come for me because the other case was dismissed because he didn't show up because I had enough to tear his behind in court, and he know it. And nobody want to hear no damn. I don't know how they have those calls where they change up the voice. You sorry, nigga? No, you ain't sorry. You ain't sorry. None of them sorry. Not sorry. I lost my child. I shouldn't have had to been fight and almost had to, slice somebody open. Man, oh man. mm, mm, mm. Mm, mm, mm. It's sad. It's sad. It's terrible. And what's even plainly disheartening is that I believe this is how slavery started in the beginning, selling one another out. And how dare these guys with this ego thinking that they should have anybody. And, I know that there were probably girls that were doing things and, serving everybody, like they would say. Because these guys, they talk like females. And from my understanding, they was having the little, gay parties. Shucks, if they gay and that's their way, then, own up to it. But no, a lot of them are hiding behind marriages and have beautiful women. This Diddy thing ain't start, you know, on the strength of anonymity. Some of the guys in the first generation have talked about other guys, how, they wasn't staying for what they call the freak offs. They're actually orgies, but they just gave it a new name. Just like, the tapes, the jam tapes, they call them the mixtapes. I had to figure out what the hell is a damn freak off. Then it came to me, oh, because one guy, he was saying, what, the orgies? What's wrong with that? I was like, oh, you nasty too? What's wrong with it is that, you have people that are not willing participants. And the manipulation and the coercion and the drugging and doing all of that. And the damage. The hell. That's what's wrong with that. And not only that, those cats that was even in the first generation, not all of them, some of them, allegedly, was great and got pregnant. Who the hell want to tell their kid that? And some of them got impregnated and they were teenagers. And, just like they say in the South where they used to have those shot, the done weddings. Yeah, I believe it was like that too. So some people can't even talk. But what about our boys? And that particular thing also isn't only for hip hop. Because I remember, I didn't know till years later that there were boys and probably girls that were being preyed on in those homes. So yeah, I think every victim, every survivor is in high alert. You understand, especially with complex, you know. And then you got some stupid ass morons that want to walk around. Oh, if it happened, whatever happened, happened. Fuck you. You understand? Nobody want to hear that shit and think it's a badge of honor. You got 15, 16 kids. Who the hell you pay child support to? None of them. Now they want to run around. Oh, I'm doing this and I'm doing that. But they scared. Far as I concerned, I put on my face, get all of them. First whoever. Because the irreparable damage. Yeah, a few of them were able to come back in the industry and get their little flowers. Then they look at me like, and I be like, you know what? I was out before you was even thought about. I was in Queensbridge. I was all over. I was in Yonkers. I was in New Jersey. I was in all four boroughs. The fifth one, I didn't play in Staten Island. I never MC'd in Staten Island. You know, but yeah, I was ahead of the time. And I'm not going to stop telling my story. And I damn sure ain't giving up my intellectual property. But I must say that I've had a very interesting week, you know. But my therapist has told me, you know, don't be watching it, did it? But I'm glad that it ain't on TV. But I'll listen to Tisha Tells and I'll listen to Ticket TV and then I'll pop in and see what Hassan Campbell has to say. You know, he's not really too stuck on that. But yeah. hmm I got to check on my girl Layla Wills too, because she's been recovering from, you know, some medical issues that she's had. And I always like to text her, see how she's doing. You know, because she was definitely a champion before a lot of people came out, and it's so unfortunate that they didn't pay attention to the documentary because according to the communications director, who was, I think, a former music executive, who told me I would have never gotten a deal because I asked too many questions, but she didn't even know, even after the Silk and Lace situation, and I was working at Prudential, that someone from Atlantic Records wanted me to submit a demo, and she even followed up. But unfortunately, I had to leave from Astoria, and then my daughter got her arm refractured when she was staying at the babysitter's house. You know, so. But you know, now you look in terms of all of those deals. You know, yeah, they may be recording, but people didn't get paid. And honestly, I prefer to be on this side because I really have faith and believe that whatever's meant for me to have, I'm going to have. I'm going to be rewarding to it. See, I know what it's like to live on low provision. I know what it's like to be homeless, to be thrown into limbo because of jealousy and envy, and because of high dysfunction, and because of sick, embedded secrets that people have that have impacted family lineage lines and music industry lines. Yeah. And now people want to hide behind a damn church. Okay. And you got pastors that don't have clean hands either. You got alleged, what, who was it, Eddie Long with the boys. You know, it's really a sick world. And I don't care. I have to fight for my lineage line, for my grandkids, for your kids. Everybody else, somebody got to do it. For my poor mother, unfortunately, that's no longer here either. But yeah, I know that there's a lot of breakthroughs coming in, and I know that there's a lot of evil that is going on in the music, in the vibrations, and yeah, and all people care about is a brand, a market, and an image. It's an indirect slavery. And if you speak out and you don't want to no longer participate, you're going to get thrown over and under the bus. And do I think that's what happened with Diddy? Hell no. Because he was down with it to the end. You know, it's an addiction. Addiction comes in many different forms and fashion. It does. So at that, this is Tam, and I'm behind the mic. Peace out, and let's see what the jury has decided on Diddy.